So, Mike, feel free to take it whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Derek. Hi, everybody. There's a lot I want to get into today. Some best practices for myself that I like to share with you when working with data in Excel. We'll cover some basic functions as well, but we'll get into some more complicated stuff. But a lot to go, so a lot to go over. So with that, I'm going to turn off my camera and share my screen with you. And hopefully everyone now sees my Excel file.
We do.
Great. Um, so I opened a new Excel file. I went out to the web and grabbed some data. So nice thing about Excel, if you look at this menu at the top, where it starts with File, if you scroll over to the Data menu, you have the ability to go out and get data from different places. So you can get data from a file. That's a text file, CSV file, another Excel file. If you want, you can connect to other databases, SQL databases, Microsoft Access databases. In this case, I went out to the web, went to and downloaded the standard batting table for the 2025 regular season from baseballreference.com. So I have a lot of data here to work with, and we're going to cover it today. I do want to point out on this menu at the top, there are a couple on the end that are green. So normally when you open a new sheet or a new workbook, it ends here at SI Tools. But with here, since I went out and grabbed data from the web, it built a query for me. So it gives me a query tab. Because it was a table that was pulled from the website, it also added a table design. And we're going to cover working with Excel tables quite a bit today, and some of the benefits of using tables. But let me just quickly go to the query tab here. So with the query tab, it opens up some other tools for you. So you can, if you click the edit button, for those of you who maybe have some experience with Power BI, it opens the Power Query editor for you. So you can work here and you can see the steps Excel's already done. Here's my source connection. Over here, the applied steps. Here's the query it wrote. When I went out and did that, Excel did all this. I didn't have to do that. All I did was gave it this website address. I extracted the table and then did some other stuff. And you can, if you're familiar with Power Query Editor, you can make edits in here, but you have that access because of the query that Excel built when I went out and grabbed the data. So, on the Properties tab, you'll see things like this. So this is live web data. If this was the middle of the season in June, I would leave background refresh on, because when I go back in July, the data is going to be different. In this case, the season's over. I want to turn off enable background refresh, save my resources. I can do stuff like that. So you have that ability on the query tab. So let's get into the data. So one thing I like to do when I'm working with data is here I went out and I pulled this data, whatever my source is. This is my original data. I haven't touched it yet. So, and I want to keep sort of that source data available to me. So what I prefer to do is make a copy and work on the copy. So here I can either right click on the sheet and move or copy that sheet. So I can say, all right, I want to move this sheet. I want to create a copy, and I check the create a copy box and I hit OK, and it's going to insert a new sheet. Notice it names it the same, but puts a little 2 in parentheses, but it copies everything exactly as it is when I do it that way. So all my formatting is the same. sometimes I prefer to work with just the raw data. Get rid of the formatting, let me format it the way I like to see it. So if I go back to my original data, I can click anywhere within my data set and use the Control A key. That's going to highlight all my data, including my header row at the top there. And I am going to just right click, copy, and on my new sheet here, I am just going to paste the values. I don't want any of that formatting. So in your paste options, you have paste, this first one, which does the same thing that we just did, which is basically copy all the data, the formatting, everything as is. You have this next one, which is just paste values. So I just want the values as they appear on my worksheet. And we'll notice a couple things with this. And whenever you're working with data from a source, whether it was a file sent to you or you went out and extracted some data from, say, a payroll system or another ERP system, or in this case, the web, it might need a little cleanup before you can actually work with it. So if you notice, a lot of my numbers are actual text. They're formatted as text, and you have the option to change those here, because if as text, I can't work with the numbers. So if I want to sum a field down here, and I go to the auto sum button, notice it doesn't identify any numbers. So there's no range here. Normally you would see a range. And even if I say, well, give me this range here and add those numbers up, a lot of zeros here, but let's get to some numbers. There's some numbers there. But I go back and I enter my sum, it's still zero because it doesn't recognize them as numbers. So there's a couple ways I can change those numbers, change those what are actually numbers stored as text into actual numbers. And the first is when you click on one of those fields where you have a number, is you see this little warning logo that pops up. If you hit that, you see that it's a number stored as text. I want to convert it to a number. Notice it converts it to a number and right justifies it like I would typically expect a number to show in an Excel cell. So, but I've got all these cells that are numbers. So let's highlight all the data that I want to convert into numbers, and I can do this hitting the shift key on the first cell. Scrolling over to the end, I want all these numbers, just those fields, and then page down to the end, get all my number data. And I want to convert those to text. So back up. It's my little warning. Well, that one, I lost my little warning button when I did that, but I'm going to show you the next way. So obviously you can still use the warning button. I don't want to do one cell at a time. So another way to quickly convert those is another sort of paste special option here. So I'm going to just pick an empty random cell over here, put the number 1, and then I'm going to copy that cell with the number 1 that I just entered in there. And now I'm going to go back to my selection, select my data. And then I'm going to just right click on the data. I'm going to go to paste special. And then under the operations section, I want to hit multiply. What it's going to do is take that one that I copied and multiply all these cells by 1, essentially converting them into numeric fields. So now I have numbers to work with. I don't need my 1. I don't need my 1 anymore over here. I'll just get rid of it. And now you can see I actually have a number there where I had put that cell originally. Let's go. And if I pick another column with my numbers and I hit auto sum, yes, it gives me a number. Now it stopped because it ran out of numbers going up here and it hit another column. So now I notice my data has a bunch of header rows spread out and it repeats. So as part of my cleanup, I want to get rid of that. So I can see that. And the easiest way to do that, I believe, clean up data, and it helps you look at all your columns, is to use the filter option. So if you go to the data tab and click your filter button, turns on your filter, you'll notice a little drop down arrow that shows up on each one of your header columns. So I'm going to look at my data. It says player there in that column. So I want to search for player. And it automatically checks it. And I can add that filter. And now it gives me all those header rows that had repeated. I want the first one. So I'm going to leave that. But I can come in here now and delete all these rows. Just highlighting all of them. Right click and select delete row. Now, you don't have to panic here because your data is blank. You still have a filter on. You're only looking for those player columns. So if you come back here, clear your filter, and now there's all your data with those extra header rows all removed. So kind of complete cleanup. I want to make it a little more readable as well. I notice my name column, I can't read the full name of the player. So I want to fit, there's a few ways to do that as well. I can come up to the view tab. Sorry, home tab, format, and go to auto fit my column width. Gotta select my data first. So select all your data again, click in here and go Control A. Then go to format, auto fit your column width. And now I can read my entire name. It does kind of shrink up some of my numbers, can be a little dizzying. I kind of like the spacing I had before. So if I don't like the way it looks now, I can click the undo button or Control Z. You hover over the undo button at the top of your shortcut bar here. You can hit that, return it the way it was. I like the spacing on my numbers. I just want to see the names. So you can pick an individual column, hover between column B and C here. You'll notice it turns into a double-sided arrow. You double click there and it auto fits just that column. So now I kind of like the way that looks better. And one other thing I like to do personally is rename my data. So, but my data sheets. So I always know what my original data is. So here's, you can double click on the sheet name. Here's And I often like to give it a date so I know when that data was pulled. And on my copy sheet here, I like to call it my working copy. That way I know which one's which. I don't have to mess around. And I always have an original to fall back on in case during my working copy I'm making edits and I mess something completely up. I can always go back and check on my original data. So now that I have my data cleaned up, I have a readable spreadsheet. I can start working with it. So first thing I do is I want to go down and here's my column for hits. And I want to know what my total number of hits were for the season. And then I got this other column, this other row down here that I see MLB average. I don't want that. I just want the individual stats. So now I'm gonna add. But notice I've scrolled down the bottom. I can't see which column I was in, my hits. If I lose my place. So now I want to do is I want to freeze these columns so I can see them. So in your view tab, you have the option to freeze your columns. You can freeze panes, freeze the top row, freeze the first column. So if I freeze the top row, I can scroll down and now notice I can still see where my hits column is. I didn't have to remember it was column K. And now I can go down to the bottom and say, give me the sum, and we go back to the home tab. They make it convenient. It's the most commonly used function. Use the auto sum tab and it plugs in the formula. Now, because I got rid of those erroneous or the extra header columns that were thrown in there, it goes all the way. It gives me my full range from K2 to K923. I can hit enter and there's my sum. So there was 44,109 hits in the Major League in the 2025 season. So now if I want to look at how many hits just the Yankees got, I can filter on my team and say, just show me New York Yankees. And here we are. The total is now hidden because it didn't contain the New York Yankees logos, but I can expand it. It's at the bottom here. See my 44,109, but that was my total for everybody. I just want the total for the Yankees. So I want to introduce you to a new formula if you're not familiar with it, but subtotal is, in my opinion, a better formula to use for some when you're manipulating data and you want to use filters here and there. So we're going to delete this formula. And instead, I want to use subtotal. So all your formulas always start with an equal sign. I start typing sub. There's some of the formulas that have sub in it. I want to select subtotal. But subtotal, you can do lots of different things as well. Sum is one of them. It's what I'm looking for here. But you can also do averages and things like that. But I want to do sum function, and I want that same full range of K2 to K923. And you notice as I type it in, it highlights it for me. And I hit enter. And now there's my total hits for the Yankees. You can quickly verify that if you highlight all the Yankee players here with hits. You notice at the bottom of your screen, it shows you the average numbers of the cells you have highlighted in your range, the number of cells that are there that actually contain numbers, and then the sum of those cells that you highlight in your range, and that matches what I have here in my subtotal field. And then if I take off my filter, or even change it to another team, notice it changes, and the Red Sox had 1,414 hits, but I want, if I show all, and go back to the end, I hit my Control N key, and there's my original 44,109 with the subtotal field. So I personally recommend using subtotal instead of sum, because it gives you that flexibility to see real totals when you start filtering data. So the other thing I want to look at so we froze the top row, but if I want to go over here to the end, notice I have hits, I have doubles, triples, home runs, but I don't have singles. I would like to know how many singles without having to do the math every time. So if I wanted to add a column for singles, I can come over here, but now I've scrolled way over to the right. I can no longer see what player, the team that he was on. I lose that information. So I want to change the way I froze. I don't want to just freeze the top row. So I'm going to go back to my view. I'm going to unfreeze panes. So you'll notice when you have panes frozen, before we froze that top row, this said freeze panes. Now that we have a frozen top row, it says unfreeze. So I'm going to unfreeze panes. And now I want to be able to see the player and his team. And then they have the league column here. So I want to see all of that. So I'm going to freeze it. Here, I still want my top row. So I'm going to freeze. I'm going to put my cursor in the cell just below the top row and just to the right of the last row I want to see as I scroll. And I'm going to hit freeze panes. Just this top selection, I'm going to freeze panes, and it freezes both the top and the front. So you'll notice as I scroll to the right, I can still see the player, his team and league. And I'm going to add a column for singles here, and then I want to put in a formula to calculate my singles, which is just my total number of hits. I don't know what my hit column was. Let me go back over there. So here we go. Total number of hits. And notice it highlights it with a sort of moving dashed line because it's now active in your formula. I can add another symbol. I'm gonna subtract, and then I'm gonna pick my next field. I'm gonna subtract doubles. I want to subtract the number of triples the player hit, and I want to subtract the number of home runs, just to get the total number of singles. And then I just can hit my enter key. There's my formula in the formula bar at the top, which is K2 minus L2 minus M2 minus N2. I hit enter. And so now I know my player's got 106 singles, and that player is Francisco Lindor of the New York Mets. So now I want to copy that down for all. So I use the autofill feature, which on the highlighted cell where it says 106, there's sort of that green box in the bottom right. If I hover over that, it turns into a cross. I double click and it'll drag my formula and autofill all the way down. It also gives me an autofill box. I can change that option. But I just wanted to copy the formula. It did. So you'll notice now it's K119 minus L119. It does the sort of cell reference automatically for you. So, and I'm going to go back to my working tab. Well, the copy of my working tab for just a moment, because I want to leave my original tab intact. Sorry, not my working tab. And notice, first of all, the green bar. That's sort of the default table design. You can go to table design tab here. You can change that. If you prefer gray, there's lots of options here. Styles, you can change it. However, whatever your preference is. If you like the gray change, I can have a purple header, but I can have light and gray to kind of make it a little more readable. But whatever works for you. That was the default here. But it also threw this column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. When you exported it from Excel, it didn't recognize that this was actually the header column. So it created its own header column because it is a table. So one thing when you're doing formulas, and I'm going to repeat that exercise I just did, is I'm going to add singles here. It automatically gives me a new column name here, number 35. And I'm going to add my formula. So I want to subtract, I want to take my hits. But notice in the formula bar, it doesn't say K2 or K3 in this case because I have the extra row. It says column 11. So I'm going to go back. When you use tables, the columns actually have sort of references and named ranges, and you can change how you do it. It adds a level of readability to your formula. Because when I work on my working copy and I come over here, oops, sorry, I'm still in my formula field. Let's go back there. Get out of that for a second. So what I'm here, I'm looking at this, and someone comes and reads that formula. It's like, well, what's K2 minus L2? I have to go back and figure out what all those rows are. But by having a table or using a table, you can actually use references. So I'll be able to say I'm actually subtracting hits from doubles, and it make my formulas a little more readable. So, but this data over on this working copy is not a table, but I can easily convert it to an Excel table. So I'm just going to click on any cell in my data range here and Control A to select it all, including the header row. And I'm going to, on the Insert tab, select Table. You can see there, Control T also would have the same effect, but I'm going to select Table. It's going to highlight my range. I already selected my range, so it knows A1 through AI 924. And then we want to make sure my table has headers is checked, and click OK. And it turns it into a table for you. So now when I look at, let's go back. Now I can change my formula to be a little more readable. So notice now it says that hits. I want to subtract doubles, subtract triples, subtract home runs, and hit enter. And now my formula is just a little more readable. So when somebody else comes in and looks at a formula, they can say, oh, I can see what's happening. Excel's a little intuitive here as well. I didn't drag and drop yet, but if I want to hit, if I know my column names at the top, I can just easily do that. Equals hits minus double minus triples minus home runs. And even without the proper syntax, oops. If I hit the bracket, it gives me that options, and I can click hit. my brackets again. I can scroll down. I can find my column headings. And then without the ads, Excel automatically fix it for me. So I can just say yes. So knowing the names of my columns is a lot easier than knowing the letter that corresponds to it. So knowing hits is just H as opposed to it's an actual column K is a lot easier. So, and then I still have the autofill feature, still works. But now my formula looks the same on every single cell. So that's one way. Another tool, say for simplifying formulas, is to create named ranges. So it makes it easier to understand what's going on. Say when I put totals at the bottom of my cell, but with Excel, benefits of using, say, named ranges, it makes your formula easier to understand. You have auto ranges adjust. So as you add or delete data, it recognizes that's needs to adjust your range of data. And you can also quickly jump around your spreadsheet using named ranges. So what I want to do is go back, select my entire data set again. So click anywhere within the data, hit Control A. And then on your data tab, on your formulas tab, I'm going to see create from selection over here and define names. So I'm going to go create from selection, and I want to just use my header row and create named ranges using my headers. And I'm going to click OK. And Excel creates these ranges for me. So now when I look here and I go to if I go to my name box over here at the left of my formula bar, and I hit my drop down now. Oops. I think I had some data left in from when I was messing around earlier. So let's go ahead and highlight my selection again, create from selection. I just want the top row. see what was happening there. So I wanted to make sure I didn't notice it, but when I hit Control A, it didn't grab my header row. So I just hit the Shift key, get my header row. Now create my named ranges, just the top row. So now when I look at my drop down, I can see all my columns here are now available. So I can go over to any of these columns. It'll highlight my range for me. So here's my hits column. It automatically highlights those ranges. So the benefit of doing those named ranges is now I can come here. It makes my formulas a little easier. And if I want to know the total number of doubles, or I want to add my subtotal here, I collect my sum function. And I can, in my range, I just want it to be doubles. So I'm going to enter that named range. And notice it highlights it for me. I'm just doing doubles. Now, I had to put an underscore there because I know the rules of naming ranges, but you can see that. Let me just get that in here again. You'll notice when you type your references as well, that they show up here, and you can see that they're ranges by the symbol. So here's your formulas, but you have named ranges. So here's hits, hit by pitch, home runs are showing up here. I'm not sure why I'm getting that name, that circular reference here. I see. Okay. So I had an extra row here I was typing in. So let's go. There we go. So now my formula is a little easier to read. I had an extra row in here that was included. That's why I kept getting that circular reference. But so below my subtotal line, I can enter that here. And now it's just much more easy to read and a lot quicker to enter your formulas as well. So There we go. Enter the number of doubles, and that kind of just adds some readability to your formulas. So when you hand off a spreadsheet to somebody else and they're clicking on and seeing formulas, it just makes it easier for them to understand what's happening. It also allows you, if you know your column names, to just use your column names and not have to scroll around saying, all right, this is cell K or column K, and figure that out when you're entering your formula. So just some benefits there. Sorry for the little hiccups. I know we're getting close to the end.